Well, hey everyone, welcome to today's Articulate training webinar. Today we are looking at social personality quizzes. Well, that's the name I call them. I don't know if that's the official name, but we're looking at those fun engagement kind of quizzes that you see on news sites, entertainment sites like Buzzfeed, those kind of game sites, the very visual type quizzes. That's what we're doing. I'll show you some examples in just a moment so you can see what I'm talking about here. But a couple things before we get started. There we go. We are recording today's session. It's been almost a year since I did this session. So on the resource page that you'll see in the GoToWebinar, I think it's the Q&A panel or the questions panel, one of them, there's a link to the resource page where I have the previous recording. It's been a year, so I'll just get it updated with today. The content's essentially the same, but Storyline's interface has changed. I've got a different project we're building, so I'll get that updated today and you'll get the email notification tomorrow. Real quick, we are recording the session resources. I've got someone helping me out in the back channel. It's a little larger group for today's session, so if she's not able to get to your questions, just please follow up with us in the forums. Just post in eLearning Heroes and just say, hey, I was in that session, Dave's session, or the quizzes session, and we'll be more than happy to help you out. And then speaking of the session real quick, it is a little bit, it's a little beyond the basics, so this is not part of our Getting Started series. This is more of our skill builders. So I am assuming you have a basic working knowledge of Storyline. So we are working with some things like variables, and I'm just going to go through a lot of the basics a little bit quicker. If you are brand new, I'd say, it's still a great session, I think, from a beginner's perspective, because you can see kind of what real projects or a little more advanced projects look like. You'll have the recording, you'll have the source file, so you could always get back in and rewatch it. But just know that I'm not explaining the core concepts like states, layers, and triggers. I'm going to build everything from scratch, so you at least still see that process, but it probably could feel a little bit fast if you're new. With that, GoToWebinar. I haven't seen this issue in a while for GoToWebinar, but if for any reason you have audio or video cuts out, I won't have the camera on for the whole session, but if the screen sharing feels like it froze or you hear me stop talking, just know that I never stop talking, and you could just refresh your browser and that tends to reset the connection for whatever reason. Although we haven't seen that problem so much lately, so that's good. All right, and then finally, here's some contact info for me. Happy to connect with you if you like, and you can find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, or just send me a note at Articulate. There's my contact info if you want to do that. And then a couple things about the session for today. We're going to look at some examples. I don't know if they're really called social personality, but that's kind of what they are. Like, which Harry Potter character are you? Which color crayon would you be? And they just show you a series of visual images or icons, and then you just choose them, and then you kind of randomly get this result slide. We're going to build that from scratch. I'll show you some examples from our previous challenge that folks have shared. On the resource page, you'll find some examples as well as some downloads. So at least you can open these up and see how some folks built these together. And then, of course, you'll have the file that I built. All right, I think that is it. Let's do this. I'm going to switch over to the examples, and then we'll just look at some, and then we'll just get started with the project. All right, so give me a second here. All right, so with that, let me come over here to our resource page. Here's the resource page. Obviously, it's in the new community now, and you can see some links down below for today's session. All right, let's look at a couple examples of what I mean by this. So it was inspired. Oh, where is the challenge? I guess I don't. I got to pull it up. Challenge. E-learning challenge. There we go. So it's just a challenge. I think this might be the second or first one. I don't remember. 3 years ago, probably the second one. So just based on those popular BuzzFeed type questions, news site, entertainment sites, we know what color crayon are you? What kind of pet are you? Which pet are you? What Harry Potter character? Right, so it just shows you a bunch of images. So it's a very visual type quiz, not asking you typical multiple choice questions, even though it is structured like a multiple choice. But the images are going to be photographs, colors, the cutout graphics, things like that. So that's the general idea right here, but it also is just a really great way to practice building more creative quizzes. So here's a couple examples. This is the previous example I built for the previous session. So which character are you? Are you a photographic illustrator or modern illustrated? And so just going to ask a series of questions, right? So pick a camera that you would take. What kind of camera would you take? And so the idea is you go through each of these, there's assigning a value of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, something like that. And then for each question, based on the choice you make, you assign an outcome. So it could be totally random. You could put a little bit more science into it, But essentially, it's just a fun way to ask questions, and then really kind of draws learners in, because what is your, what was your favorite challenge, or what color of the year are you? Pick a pattern, right? And so we're just going to assign values, and we're using variables to track each of those choices, and then based on the choices, the number of value each one of these choices, 1 through 6 gets, or however many you're building, then you assign a results based on that. And so what I set up here is a temporary screen, and this is going to help us when we build this out, because this is just where we add up the totals. You don't have to have this, but it's a way for teaching this. It's a way for us to kind of pause, and we'll show the values for each of the choices. And then when you continue, based on the value of the variables, based on the value of whichever choice got the most clicks, then you are assigned a specific character. And that's the idea here. So a couple variations of this from some users. This one's from Monse. What I like about this one's a little bit different, and it kind of probably simulates a little bit more of what you'd see in one of those quizzes, because there is no submit button. As soon as you make a choice, you just move on to the next one. So it keeps you moving through the quiz and question a lot faster. I think this is more of a template. She didn't really customize each of these, so it's something you can download and modify. But you don't get a lot of that feedback part. Feedback's not important in these types of quizzes. It's really about getting you through quickly and then assigning a value. Let's see this next one here. I think this is Samuel. I want to say it is. Nope, Tara. All right. So what should you be when you grow up? And so this is kind of following a very kind of almost a literal model of what you typically see on these news type quizzes. And you can see, just make a choice and then you verify. Select all images with a storefront. Let's read the directions. It's been a little while since I've seen this one. I think that's all storefront. And I still am not getting it right. Are you kidding me? Let's reset this one more time. I want to go through at least a couple questions here and see what we have. So storefront, that's a storefront, that's a storefront. Maybe that seems like a storefront, and that seems like a storefront. Okay, so I got it this time. I'm not a robot. And then we jump right into the quiz. So a little gatekeep. Oh, that was a little Nextja type, CAPTCHA type test. And then you're making a choice, and then you submit, and you're going to go through them. And it's adding up each of the choices. Love the animated background right there with the animated GIFs. And then who would you like to meet? So I think this is a really, what's nice about this one is it really sort of mimics what you would see in one of those social quizzes. And I'm just going to go through kind of quickly here. But the transitions, very nice effect, especially with the colored illustration combined with the sketch illustration in the background. So what would I do? Let's see how many more of these we have. Don't judge me on my choices. I'm just clicking these quickly, and we'll see what we come to. So this might be the results journey. All right. So gate screen. Should you be? And then you got a pop star. All right. That sounds fair. That sounds fair. So here's a little different approach to it. Follow your nose to find out. Guess your personality type based on what you smell. Certainly old books, right? Drag the nose to the choice. So it's slightly different approach here, right? We're going to drag and drop something on the choice. Really no different than a multiple choice, but it does create a little different level of perceived engagement. All right, and then we get to see what we have here. All right, the professional. Let's look at one more. I like this one. I wanted to include this one because it's a slightly different approach. So you're using sliders this time rather than a bunch of clicks. But as the sliders dragged out for each of these choices, a variable is being set. So if you ever worked with sliders, you don't necessarily directly work with variables. Storyline does the creation for you. However, each time that slider moves across, each step in the sliders, we call it, so 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, that is a new value for the variable. And so when this is added up, you're adding up slider 1, 2, and 3 based on those values. You click continue, and then there you have it. So the version we're going to build today, very similar. I'm going to ask a series of questions, find out what character you are. I'm just using placeholder text here. But you have a series of choices, and as you choose, what I wanted to do here, though, before we dive into the project, is notice how I'm showing you the values of each of the variables. So each time a choice is made or selected when we click submit, choice 1, 2, or 3 is going to be assigned a value. So the first choice was value 1. You can see that right there. When I submit now, because choice 3 is submitted, you'll see this 0 will then turn to a 1. So I think I only have 5 questions here. So I'll just kind of toggle between 1 and 2 and 3. So what do we have? One more choice. And so it's showing the total. So this is what I call a gate screen, or just a excuse me, like a hub screen. You do not need this. We could advance automatically to the results, which is typical of these types of quizzes. But in this case, from a teaching perspective, you want to see what those values are. And then if the values are equal, we're going to have a random number to assign one of those two and just choose one. So sometimes based on how many questions you have, you could have an equal number of choices between two or more choices. And then we come in here and you're a Vector Blues AI image generation style. All right, so with that, that is it. I'm going to set up the screen here just for this first one. So all I have going on in this first screen is just a placeholder graph. I've got a background image that I've added to the slide master, and then just some placeholder text just to kind of give us a jump start. But we're going to build all of the interactivity from scratch. And so the neat thing here is, and this is so important for working in Storyline, you build the first one, whether it's a button with all the different states to it, you build an advanced trigger with some conditions to show different things. You get the first one set up, and then you're just going to duplicate. So you're going to set the first one up. We'll spend a little bit more time on this one. It'll probably the bulk of the time will be on this first slide, and then after that, we're just going to duplicate everything else after that, and that's going to make it so fast. So let's just get the question in here, question one, and I'm just going to add a question, and I'll just keep the same generic question in here, right? 2 sentences about cats in space suits. I don't know, right? So this would really be our question. You know, what cat are you, or what TV show are you, something like that. So I'm just using that for some placeholder text, and then we'll add an image. So I'll say cat in a space suit. Cat or not, actually. I think that's the correct term, cat or not. And any one of these is fine, so we'll grab one, and then I have my image. So what I'll do is, I'm not going to worry about swapping out images and everything. I will change the question number so we can see as we progress, see what we're doing there. But essentially, there's my initial graphics. Probably always good practice to name these. So name title, and then we have our question, and then image. All right, and we could jump over this, but from the production perspective, I think it always makes sense just to see how things come together. All right, so I'm just going to add a circle. A circle is a very popular shape in e-learning. Rectangle and circle are probably the two most common. I'm curious if you have a preference for either. Now, one thing I'm going to do real quick, because I'm working on my laptop, is I'm going to press Control-Shift-Return, Enter. So the reason being is I want to lock my aspect ratio. For whatever reason, when I drag on this machine, that doesn't always recognize this, and I want to make sure that when I scale this up and down, I always keep that aspect ratio, and I don't have to go in and manually set it. So just basic formatting, and again, once I get this first choice circle set up, I'm going to duplicate it. I don't want to go through this whole process again, and maybe make the weight a little bit bigger, 3, and then let's just put one. I'll put choice. It's all white right here, so I can't see 1. And then with that selected, so there's text right there, but you can't see it because the color is white. And I'll just make it red. All right, so I'm not going to worry about anything formatting. So there's my default state. I'm going to come down here to states. I'm going to click Edit States, and I just want to add a selected state. So when it's selected, when the button's pressed, this shows that it's indicated. Because we're going to have a submit button for hours. Just slows it down. Again, like that one example from Monse, it didn't have the submit button, but the benefit there is that's when you already have it set up, that makes sense. But for here, I think just it slows us down, lets us take a look at what we're doing. All right, so not making a lot of customization. There's just my normal state and then my selected state. That works. And then with that, I'm going to come in here and I'll say choice 1. And then let's just duplicate it. So a couple ways we can duplicate. If you have, I always like to ask this because I think there's about 6 different ways that we could do this. If you have a favorite option for duplicating buttons or objects, what is it? Share it with me. I'm going to press and hold Control key on the keyboard and then click and drag, and that'll make a copy. So that's probably my most used. And I'll just change that number to 2. Looks like it just froze up here for a second. Just a moment. So I have seen this before lately. I might need to do a refresh. So there's choice 2, then I'll update it here in the timeline. And what's nice is once we duplicate this on the slide, all right, I see a lot of Control-C, Control-Vs. That's a good one. That's a classic. Control-C, Control-V. There's my choice 3, and I'll update this one. All right. I won't have to go through all this in just a moment. I'm just getting this initially set up. Let's align these graphics right here. So I'll say format, and then we're going to align to the middle and then distribute across. And maybe move those up just a little bit right there. And then with that, I think the last thing I want to do is just add my own custom submit button. So rectangle, also very popular. Circles are popular. Rectangles are popular. Probably something good to know. And then we'll just call this one submit, or let's call it continue, because we're not treating this exactly like a quiz. And then with that, I'll say it's white and outline is black, and then we'll make the text black. Okay, and then the last thing I might want to do is just to prevent the learner from clicking this, I'm going to add a disabled state. So I'll say edit, and I'm going to create a disabled state. So I like disabled because disabled means they should be able to see the object, but they're not going to be able to click it. So I'm going to right click, and I'm just going to make this transparent. A lot of good debates on whether you should make this transparent or just make it lighter. I am not worried about it right now. So there's that, and then I'll just make the text a little bit lighter as well. So what that's going to let the learner do is they're going to be able to see that there's a button there, but they can't interact with it. So they'll be able to interact with it once one of these buttons is selected. I'm going to come down and click Done to close out of my states, and then I'm going to set my initial state to disabled. All right, so that means it's there, it's visible, but when I preview the slide, the learner would not be able to interact with this until the state is changed to normal. Now, there is something we have to do to these three buttons right here, and that is I need to set them up. I'm going to preview this. I need to set up those buttons in a way that only one of them can show that selected state at once. Because I'm building all of this from scratch, there is not that basic functionality set up. So if I click choice 1, it's selected. If I click choice 2, it's also selected, and choice 3. So it's kind of acting like a multiple select type interaction. But I don't want each of these, right? So if I click, each time I click, I can select and deselect it. What I want is for only one of these to show a selected state at one time. And this is probably one of the most amazing features. It's been around since the very beginning. If you don't know this, it is called a button set. So I can just select those objects, right click, and choose button set, and then button set 1. Nothing looks different. There's absolutely no visible change to the buttons, but check this out. When we preview this, you're going to have it's going to act like a multiple choice type object where only one of these can be selected. So Storyline's taking care of all those disabled triggers for you by deselecting each one. You don't have to do it. You just right click and then choose as a button set. Cool. And then let's say we'll change this button. So this is some basic Storyline right here, but we want to change the state of this button when. So we're going to change it from disabled to normal when any one of these is selected. So as soon as the learner makes a choice, then that button will turn to normal. So here's how this works. Again, another just core functionality in Storyline. And we always begin with the action, asking ourselves, hey, what is it you want to do? Well, I want to perform the most common state in Storyline, common action and trigger, common trigger in Storyline, change the state of, and then we just have to find that button, which I did not name yet, so I'll go back and do that. Change it from rectangle 1 to the state of normal, not when timeline starts, but we're going to evaluate when these other objects are selected. So we just come down to the object events and say when state of, and I can choose all three of these. Now, notice real quick that it says all of. Instead of all of, I just want at least one, which is all I can ever get because I have a button set up. And then if we preview this one real quick, as soon as I click one, there it is, and we can go forward. All right, I'm going to save this real quick just so we don't lose anything here. All right, so everything is set up right here. Next thing I want to do is I want to assign a value to each of these buttons. So I need a variable to track whether it's choice 1, choice 2, or choice 3. So here we go with the variable creation process. Now the neat thing is after I create these variables and set up these final triggers, we're essentially done for however many questions you want. So this all of our time is coming here up front. Now I'm going to create the variable, and we do that by coming over here to the triggers panel and just click that little project variables icon. and we'll create the variables. So to create a new variable, it's a 3-step process. First step is to create the variable, and I'm just going to call this one choice 01. And we choose a type. So this is all part of creating. So I'm just going to say it's a number because we want to count. We're counting. So we need the numeric characters, and the default value is 0, right? Because nothing's been selected or counted. Click OK, and we'll just go through this one more time. Choice 02, number. Now, if I had 6 choices or 5, I would need to create a variable for each one of those. I'm keeping this super simple, so we only have 3 choices, which makes this a little bit easier. But the same concepts would apply. You just need a variable to track each of the choices you see. So like in some of those examples, there were 6 choices or more, so you would just need one for each of those. All right, that's good for there. Now what I want to do is a lot of different ways that we can do this. I could assign the variable as soon as each one of these is clicked. The downside to doing that is if I say add 1 to choice 1 variable, each time I click it, the learner still can go through. Now, if I automatically move them through where they didn't get a chance to select another choice, then that would work. But otherwise, I'd have to add 1 and then subtract 1 for each time I click. That's a lot more work, totally possible, but we're waiting for the learner to click the continue button, which reminds me, continue. To click the continue button, which means you can keep clicking, and then whatever that last selected choice is, that's what's going to happen here. So we're actually going to put the triggers all on the continue button. So here's how it works. I'm going to say add, or actually adjust variable. So come on down here under more, and we want to adjust a variable. So this is a language that we use in Storyline. It could be, set variable. If you're in a different programming language, we're saying adjust. And then we have our operators. Operators means what do we want to do to it? Subtract, multiply, divide, or add. I'm going to add I'm going to choose add. If I set it, then I'm basically setting the value. So no matter what that value is as they go through, it would always just erase that and make this a permanent number, a fixed number. I want to have addition, meaning I can continue adding to a value. So I'm going to say add a value of 1 to the variable of choice 2. So these are my project variables up here. So choice 1, when the state of, and I'll say choice 1, is selected, but we need the if choice 1 is selected, adjust variable when choice 1 is selected. Click OK. So that's what we have right there. And here's our production tip again. So we got that first trigger set up. I'm just going to copy this. So in Storyline, we get the first one set up, and then we paste it. Actually, come back on here. And so actually I may redo this because I just made a mistake. Sorry. I wanted to assign to the continue button. So adjust variable, and then we'll say choice 1 add. So I got the first part right, but my event was wrong. So I'm saying add 1 to choice 1 when user clicks the continue button, right? So I knew I needed a condition here. When user clicks the continue button. So this is what we have. Then we need the condition if the object is selected. All right, sorry about that. So it's not about a variable condition. In this case, it's an object condition, meaning we're going to evaluate the state. And the state is if choice 1 is equal to selected. So that's how we should have had it up. Hopefully you're still with me. I'm looking at the count. I didn't lose too many people on that one. Add a value of 1 to the choice 1 variable. This is the variable when user clicks the button, but we have to have the condition. Otherwise, it's just going to add 1 to choice 1 as soon as they click it. That's not what we want. We want when the state of choice 1 is selected. All right, so there is my trigger. I'm going to copy this, copy the trigger, paste it, and then actually copy it and make sure that I'm selected on the continue button, and then paste it. There we go. Add value of 1, and then we're just going to update this one. So we'll say add it to choice 2 when the user clicks continue if the state of choice 2 is selected. I don't think I need my slide layers here, so I'll paste this one more time, and then we just make this update. So again, right, I had to redo that once to get that in there, so choice 3. But that's the benefit of working this way in Storyline is you get that first one set up, and then you can duplicate, but you got to get that first one set up correctly. Now, the thing I want to do now is verify. This is really my last step here before I begin duplicating the slide, and that is I want to verify that this is working, that a value of 1 is assigned to each of these when I click the submit button. And essentially it's set up that way, it's happening, but as a developer, as a storyline designer, I really want to verify that. I want to make sure that that indeed is working before I then duplicate this slide 20 times or whatever and get all the way through before I realize it's not working. Now, the way we do this is working with what we call variable references. So we're going to reference the value and display that on the slide. And so the easy way to do that, or the only way to do it, is well, there's probably 2 ways. I want to say Control T on the keyboard. I just want to bring up this little box of text, and I'm going to say choice 01, and I'm just going to put a space, and I want to add a reference right here, meaning I want to add the value of that choice 1 variable. So with that still blinking, I'm going to come up to the Insert tab on the ribbon, and then head over here. Now my monitor, my screen's a little bit smaller, but there's my insert reference, and I'm just going to insert the value that I want to reference, meaning I'm just going to display. You can think of reference as display the variable's value. The default value was 0, but if we happen to be that's the one that's selected when we click submit, then that value will change from 0 to 1. So, okay, and then you get that little, right? You see that little project variable right there. It's sort of highlighted in yellow. That just indicates that that is a variable reference. And then what we can do, I'll show you another production tip here. I'm just going to drag that across, drag it across one more time, is I can right-click, change the text, and then I can right-click this, right-click right on that project variable, and then come into reference. So the reference, I can automatically change this right here on the slide without having to go back through that whole process. So I'll say project variable, and I'm going to change it to 2. And you see that little parentheses right there, that just says that it is currently a value of 0. So there's 2, and I'll do the same thing here. So I'm changing the text on the label here, and then I'll change the project variable to project choice 3. All right, so this you probably wouldn't show to your learner. It's not really helpful to the learners. In this example, this is more for us as designers. Now, when I preview the slide, it's still going to be 0, 0, 0. I'm going to make a choice. Now the choice that value is not going to change until we hit the submit button, right? So I click continue, or the continue button. There it is, and you can see that it's changed. Now the only thing we need to do is tell Storyline to go to the next slide. Now I'm going to come hit choice 2 again, and now it's updating. You can see I keep clicking it, but we're not going to let them keep clicking, because as soon as they click continue, it's going to go to the next slide. So that prevents them from clicking that many times. Now, just to make this easy to remove when we finish our project, I'm going to take these, I'm going to select all of them, I'm going to cut them to my clipboard, and then I'm going to go in the slide master and just paste it so I can see it on each slide, and then we'll just remove it when we publish our project. So I need to put this on the topmost layer. So there they are. That's fine right there. I'm going to close, and that's going to cascade down, and now I can't even select them here on the slide. And then the next thing on the continue button is I'm going to add a simple jump to next slide when they click that button. So we'll say jump to slide, next slide when user clicks continue button. Now, important right here is that this needs to be at the bottom. If I have this up top, triggers are going to fire from top to bottom. So what would happen is as soon as I click this, it's actually going to jump ahead and not even assign these values. So you definitely want, in this case, it does matter. Trigger order matters. A lot of times it doesn't. Actually, most times it doesn't. Typically only matters when you're doing things with variables and then leaving the slide. So make sure that's at the bottom. And then just to consolidate this and make this a little bit cleaner, I am going to select the group function. And you can see how much tighter that is, because all 3 of these triggers, actually 4 of these triggers, are all tied to that top continue button. All right, that is it. I'm going to save real quick. And unless I missed something, I don't think I did. I'm just going to duplicate this a few more times. So I'm just going to select the slide, Control D to duplicate, and I'm going to change that to 2, and that'll update the name right here. And that just gives me something visual to look at. I'm not going to change all these images out. Although I guess I could just right-click and say Replace Picture with Media Library. I should have a bunch of these in here from earlier. There's one. All right, we'll change the pictures, Media Library. I notice I don't have so many. I must have deleted the slides. So there's 3, and I'll duplicate again. Make that 4. And let's just say 5. It doesn't really matter here other than just for when you test it, you just have to go through 5 slides. But essentially, it's done. It's going to keep adding our scores as we go through it. And so we don't have to worry about all those extra steps of creating everything. So this is all going to carry. Variables are going to be persistent throughout the project. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to preview my entire project here, preview the scene, and then just see how those add up over 5 slides. Again, however many questions you want, that's totally up to you. That has no real bearing on anything we're doing at this point. So I'll say choice 1, we continue, and now we're on the next slide, question 2, and notice how that choice 1 point has carried over. I'll say choice 1 again, and now it's counting 2. And that's the logic right here. So when we're finished with all of our questions, we're just simply going to ask Storyline to go to a slide or a scene or a slide layer that we assign based on the value. So if choice 1 is greater than choice 2 is greater than 3, and so on, then that's how we'll know where to send the learner based on those choices. And so obviously overwhelmingly choice 1, and these could be rotated or swapped or randomized. That doesn't matter. I'm just keeping everything here completely persistent. All right, so there we have our initial slide. Now I'm going to add that hub slide that I talked about. That hub slide is the right here. The hub slide was the result slide where we want to just display the totals just so we can see them to verify things are working as we intended. And then when we click continue, we want to see that based on whichever's the greatest value, it should go to that slide. But then if they're equal, then we will have a randomized value at the end. So let's just do that. I'm going to come in and add a new slide. So say new slide, and then I have a different layout. So if I right click and choose, which one is it? I think it's this one. Yeah, so results, whatever you want to call it. Actually, that's not the right slide. It's this one. So results, and click continue to see which character you are, or something like that, or which cat image style you are, something like that. All right. And then so we already have the values right up here, so I could leave those there. I mean, if you look at the last one, I sort of just made them bigger. You can see the same values are up top, so it really makes no difference there. But if we wanted to design those, if you were showing it to the learner, we could say choice 01, and then that would be the heading part of it. And I'll just say 1. And then we need to add that reference value. So another way we can do it, we don't have to keep it tied to the text. So if you really want to, kind of style it a certain way, heck, we could even make a shape. And then with that shape on the slide, format it. And I'm just going to type in with that thing with that shape selected, I can then type in or add my value. So insert and then reference. So there's that reference again. And then we'll say choice 01. And then I do want to make that nice and big, make it easy to see. So make it white. It is white, but just got to make it a lot larger. So there we go. And then quickly just another one. Then one more. All right. And we'll make that choice 2. Again, you probably aren't going to show this. Right-click this and change the reference to 2. You probably aren't going to show this to the learner, but if you set it up as maybe it's more of a traditional type quiz, you may want to show the learner their scores. And that looks good. Let's just align each of these. So align center. And then here's one last production. Well, not one last one, but another production tip is if I want to arrange these in the center of the slide, I don't want to select all of them and then go to format and then say align middle because it's going to center them on top of each other. So instead, if I press Control G to group those, I've grouped all the choices, come over here to format, and then now if I align those to the center, it treats it as a single object, and I can choose Control Shift ungroup to put them right there. All right, and then we just need our continue button. Let's just grab it right here, Control C, but I don't need all those triggers. And let's just say we don't have to make that disabled. Make it normal, and then I'm going to delete all the triggers associated with that one. And this one too. It might have been faster to create the button. That's always a trade-off, right? It might have been faster to create to to recreate it, then delete all those triggers. I don't know. And so now for the continue button, we're going to say jump to, in this case, I have a whole new scene with 3 different slides, a slide based on the value of which one of these is greater. So this is probably the little bit more complex part because we have to evaluate, is choice 1 greater than choice 2 and choice 3? Then do this. So we have a little bit more advanced conditions here. So we kind of have to think about how we're setting this up. I just want to real quick jump into story view and show you. I have this result slide right here. So I have these 3 different slides. So if it's number 1, right, if the choice is 1 with the greatest number of clicks, then you would get the minimal. And then I have another one for 8-bit, number 2, and then there's another one. So I already set these up just as the slides that we're branching to. So this is really the results of the quiz. So back to results, and with my continue button right here, let's just go through to choice 1. So the first part, pretty easy. We'll say new trigger. What is it I want to do? I want to jump to a slide. I'm going to say this first one, 01 minimal, and that's why I just put the 01, 2, and 3 right there. When I labeled those slides, probably don't need those. I probably wouldn't use those in final publishing, but for us as developers, it makes it really easy for me to know which choice and where I'm branching to based on seeing the slide title. Because minimal, 8-bit, and vector, that could be in any order, right? So I'll say 01 when the user clicks the continue button. So now here comes our conditions. And most times you're probably used to working with a single condition if x is greater than y, but we need to have if x is greater than y and y is greater than z. So we'll say if choice 1 is not equal but is greater than, and not a value but another variable. So this is where another little difference right here. So we don't want to say if it's greater than 1 or 2. We're saying if it's choice 1 is greater than a variable, and that would be if it's greater than choice 2. Now we need a second condition down here, and this is going to be if choice 1 is greater than choice value of choice 2 or choice 3. So this just means, right, if we look at this, choice 1 is the biggest number. It's bigger than variable 2 and 3, and we do need to make sure that we have the and set up right there. Because the and, it could be or, that's not going to help because it could be, that doesn't mean that it's bigger than both of them. It just means it's bigger than one of them. So there is my first one. I click OK, and that's my trigger. So now it probably is still faster to copy and paste. So I'll just say we'll try it once and see if it's faster. So now I'm going to paste it. So it's the exact same trigger, but we want to say for the second one, if choice 2 is greater than choice 1 and choice 2 is greater than choice 3. So this first one's, I'll pull it open. It'll be easier to see. If we're working on choice 2, so I need to reverse these. So I'm going to have to change it here first. If choice 02 is greater than choice 01, and then if choice 2 is greater than variable choice 3, right? So choice 2, because it's kind of just as a production tip, right? We're just saying we need to see choice 2 as the first variables right here, and then we just need to make sure we have one of each in the others. And this gets to be a little challenging if you had 6 choices or 5, because you need to make sure that choice 2 is greater than choice 3, 4, and 5, and so on. So same principles, just a little bit more work. And then I will copy and paste for number 3, and I'll pop that up just because makes it easier to see it. So this is going to be if choice 3 is greater than 1. So I can leave that one alone. That's perfect. And then we'll say if choice, see, you notice how I can't see choice 3 right there? So I'm going to have to actually change this to something else temporarily. And now I have this option, right? Because choice 3 can't be greater than choice 3. So choice 3 is greater than choice 2. All right, so that's probably more than I say a lot of projects have. That having one condition is very common. 2, it's a lot less common, and then of course 3 and 4 would be even rarer. All right, so I think that is it. I've got those 3 set up. Let's just preview. Let me save real quick, and then we'll just preview the project. And this is going to be the benefit of seeing our choices right there. So we'll say preview the whole project. See how we did on the first one. Hopefully that mistake I made earlier gets me out of any future mistakes, but it still happens. So let's just go through a couple of these, and I could also make that transition of the slide a little bit quicker, so it goes through a little faster. So I have 1, 2, and 3. Let's just make number 2 the greatest, right? So choice 2 has 3 points. So when I click continue, I should be on the slide that says 02 and whatever that second slide was. I still don't even remember, right? So I click continue, and it went to minimal. So that tells me that I already have an issue. So let's see here. If choice 1 is greater than variable choice 2, if choice is 3, but choice 2 was greater than both of those. So there we go. And I'm looking at the comments, and I should have trusted you guys. So many people called me out on it. I don't have any difference in the slides. So this one has to come down here. So I need to check in with you. There's my second mistake, right? I didn't change. We're so focused on the conditions for each of those that I was focused down here, but not for the specific slide. So I never changed the slide. They were all pointing to the same slide. All that work didn't matter because it's always going to go to the same slide no matter what. All right. Thank you, all of you. I just didn't look. So we'll go through again. I'm only going to test this once. I'm going to hope that it works. And if it works once, I'm going to trust it. But you'd want to go through and obviously test it several times to make sure that each of these choices with the highest count would get us there. And then I'll say continue. So once again, this is the top number. I should be on the slide 2, and then there we go. So the hard part was set up. The easy part was totally avoided. All right, so one last thing here is, let's say, and it's very possible, depending on how you set this up, is that you could have 2 of these. So what do we have, 5 slides, right? So choice 2 and choice 3 could each be 2, and choice 1 is 1. So what happens if you have a tie? Well, then you need a way to randomize it, and you just don't care where they go. So I'm going to create a final variable right here, and I'm going to say, let's call it randomizer, and this will be a random number variable that we randomize when the timeline starts. So I'm just going to leave it like that. I could choose the random right here, but I'll just leave it as a number variable. Click OK, and I'll leave it like that. And then what I want to do is, it's being randomized, not yet, but we have it created, the variable's created. When the timeline starts, I am going to randomize it. It doesn't mean that we're going to use it. It just means we're only going to use it if these conditions are not all met, right? If 2 of these are the same, then the trigger is missed. It's jumped over to the next one, and if they're equal, then they can't be correct. That means that there's no single value that's greater than the others. So what I'll say is adjust variable. So I want to randomize that random variable when the timeline begins. So we'll say randomizer, and not to a value, but to a random value. So we can we can use a number variable. You can randomize a number variable, and you could also set it as a fixed number. So we're going to say set randomizer to a random number between, and I'm going to use 1 and 3. The reason I'm doing 1 and 3 is because we have 1 and 3. We have 3 total questions. If I had 6 questions, I would randomize it between 1 and 3, and so on. And we just say when the timeline starts. So on the slide. So I don't necessarily have to use this, but I am going to add it if this condition's not met, or this condition's not met, or this condition's not met. If all of those are not met, then I still want to have the learner go somewhere, and I'll just randomize it. So here's how this works. I'm just going to add it to the continue button, but those triggers will need to be at the very bottom of the trigger order. All right, so with that, just continue button selected, we'll say trigger, and then I'm going to say jump to slide, and then we'll just go through the same 3 again. We'll say minimal, right, the 01, when user clicks the continue button, and then if the condition is if the randomizer is equal to a value of 1. Now, in some ways, this could be, if you really wanted to, you didn't really care about trying to give some sort of weighted results for each of these. We actually don't even need those 3 conditions up here. We could just make it all random. But you kind of want to have it based on something, right? So if you're doing illustrated, photographic, modern illustrated characters, and you're showing images that choice questions that reference those types of graphics, then you kind of want to tie it, logically to a result based on whichever the highest weighted choices were that the learner selected. But we're going to use this just as sort of as a backup. So control copy and then paste, and we'll say go to slide 2, 8-bit, if the randomizer is equal to 2. and then paste, and then we'll say it one more time. The third one is vector blues of 3. All right, so that is it. Nothing really is going to change except for when we get to that final slide, it's going to randomize the values only if, actually, let me do this real quick. Let me put that randomizer on the slide. Cancel. I want to put the Control C, and I'll just say randomizer, just so we can see what we have there. So randomizer, and then I can just, if I were building this, knowing this, I would have put this on the slide master along with those other ones, but I only have it on one slide, so I don't have to, I could just delete that easily. But if I didn't have those on the slide master, I'd have to go through each slide and remove them. All right, so here we go. Let's pop this open, and we'll just test it once, see how it looks. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a couple of these even. So we'll say 1 and 1, 2 and 2, and then I'll give 3, 1. So we have 2, 2, and 1. Randomizer's 2, and so it's going to go to slide 2 is going to win, and we should see slide 2. There we go. Well, that's it. Again, right? We almost been at it for an hour. Other than me talking for 10 minutes showing examples, really we spent about, I'm going to guess, about 10 to 15 minutes on this one slide, just getting those initial variables and graphics all created and set up. This part was nothing, right? Those however many questions we have, and then setting up the logic right here. So in a lot of those examples, and you can see it on the resource page, the downloads, so folks share their file. You wouldn't have a continue button. This would basically be, instead of when user clicks the continue button for all of these, it would be jump to slide blah, 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 when the timeline starts on this slide if those conditions are met. So instead of a user click event, it would just be timeline. Or it could be, actually wouldn't even be on this gate screen. It'd be right here when they take the last question and they move forward. That's where you're going to branch them to one of those scenes that we set up, rather than having what I call like a hub slide just to give this feedback. But this is super helpful when you're getting started, because then you can kind of look at this, reflect on it, verify that all the choice numbers are correct, and then when you click continue, you get there. All right, well, that's really it. That's it for all the time we have. A couple things real quick. You'll have a recording tomorrow. I know I saw some comments in there. Went a little bit fast, made a couple mistakes along the way too, which I guess is kind of normal for me. But you'll have the recording. I'd say, if this is interesting to you, if you thought you want to try it, jump in the forums, practice this, try it out, take a template, and one of the templates of the downloads, even my source file, and just try to rework it with your own content. That's a good way to kind of get started, get your, kind of dip your toes into the advanced pool, if you will, and then try that on. If you get stuck, you can always find us in eLearning Heroes. More than happy to help. And then finally, if you did like the session, or you picked up a new tip or a trick, one thing I always like to ask is if you don't mind, just like email me or mention it on LinkedIn. Say, hey, I was in Dave's class. I did this social quizzes. Here's something I learned, or here's something I think I could use for my own project, or maybe I didn't even know Storyline could do that or something. First off, it lets me see what you're doing, see what you're working on, and more importantly, I think it's just a great way to connect with other e-learning Storyline designers in the community, and really just connect them, let them know what you're working on, but then maybe they also are interested, and then it's just another way you can work out loud and help build up your professional network. All right, thanks so much to my moderator. Thank you so much, Alyssa. Appreciate all your help, and thanks for staying with me. Hope you enjoyed this session, and I'll look forward to seeing y'all in a future webinar, hopefully soon.